Hey guys. All right. Chapter 14 is where we are in this book, Failing Forward. 14 is, it says, the little difference between failure and success makes a big difference. So it says, there's no failure except no longer trying. There is no defeat except from within. No really insurmountable barrier save our own inherent weakness of purpose. And that was Ken Hubbard who said that. It says most unsuccessful people believe that a huge gaping chasm stands between them and success. They suspect deep down that they will never be able to cross that void and get to the other side in achieving their dreams. But I want to let you in on a little secret. There's not much difference between failure and success, and the little difference makes a big difference. What creates that difference? Let me share a story with you, and you will be able to guess what the difference maker is. The start of an uphill battle. I think everybody in the United States has heard of Macy's department store thanks to its famous Thanksgiving Day parade and the movie Miracle on 34th Street. But fewer people know about the man who founded the store in 1858. His name was R.H. Macy. The son of a sea captain, Macy was born in Nantucket at a time when whaling was king. His first job was on a whaling ship at age 15. He spent 4 years on that ship and saw the world, traveling as far as New Zealand. When he returned to the United States with his share of the ship's earnings, which amounted to $500, he was finished with the sea. He worked several odd jobs and then took a position as an apprentice in a printing shop. But he lasted only 6 months there. He had greater ambition than the printing trade offered, a venture into retail. That's when he decided to try his hand at retail trade. With the money he had saved from his time at sea, he opened a small thread and needle store in Boston. His hopes were high and his work ethic was strong, but the business failed within a year. The next year, Macy tried again. His second store traded in dry goods, mainly European-made items bought at auction. Again, he worked hard, and again he failed. The following year, he decided to team with his brother-in-law, Samuel S. Houghton, who eventually founded Houghton and Dutton in Boston. He worked with him and learned a lot, but after a year, he decided that he needed a change. Go west, young man. R.H. Macy and his brother Charles had heard about the gold strike in California, and they decided to head west and try their hands at mining. Though they failed to strike it rich, they immediately recognized that there were opportunities to make money selling goods to the miners. Along with 2 other partners, they opened Macy and Company in Marysville, a town north of Sacramento. I didn't know this. Marysville is actually where I taught my very first teaching job. And they did fairly well until the gold ran out and the miners left the area. So they sold their business to a competitor and moved back east. Macy's next venture was a dry goods store in Haverhill, Massachusetts, a town north of Boston. He had learned something from each business he had run, and he was starting to formulate a unique philosophy of trade. At his newest store, Macy introduced innovations that would later become his trademark, selling at a fixed price while other stores haggled, buying and selling for cash only, and advertising heavily. He even wrote his own copy and designed the layout for each ad, drawing on his time in the printing business. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it in that business either, so he closed his doors. He wasn't defeated, though. The following year, he opened another store, and he sold goods for the lowest prices in town. Yet, despite his innovations, his clever advertising, and his hard work, that business didn't make it. After 3 years of struggle in a relatively small town, Macy sold out and declared bankruptcy. I gotta let Shannon in. Making a change. At that point, Macy decided to get out of retail. For a while, he worked as a stockbroker, then as a real estate broker. Hi, Shannon. We're right in the middle of a story about the guy who started the chain store Macy's. So it's about all his failures.
Oh.
Yeah, he's failed a lot of times already. Okay, it says at that point, Macy decided to get out of retail. For a while, he worked as a stockbroker, then as a real estate broker. He moved to Wisconsin to pursue an opportunity, but a financial panic that year dashed his hopes of making it really big. Despite the difficult times, he achieved modest success and he was able to make some money. With Macy's big opportunity in Wisconsin having fallen through, a friend convinced him to give the retail trade another try. Once again, he returned to the West. He had tried 5 professions: whaler, retailer, gold miner, stockbroker, and real estate broker, and this would be his 7th attempt in retail. He must have been weary, yet he was only 35 years old. He decided to try his luck in Manhattan, and that was to make a tremendous difference. Even then, New York was the largest city in the United States, and with a population of 950,000, was 100 times larger than the Haverhill area, and New York was still growing. In 1858, R.H. Macy opened a fancy dry goods store. After only 12 months, he was grossing $80,000 a year. By the 1870s, the store averaged more than $1 million in sales per year. In the 1870s, that's crazy. The father of retail as we know it. As Macy's business grew, he revolutionized retail trade. He can be credited with numerous innovations: inventing the concept of the modern department store, making set prices the norm in the industry instead of haggling, buying and selling in high volume in order to provide lower prices for customers, introducing modern retail advertising, appointing the first female executive in retail history. In 1877, Macy died while on a buying trip in Europe. However, his business lived on, and it continued to bring innovation to retail trade. Today, the company serves customers with 191 Macy's stores. Those stores exist because of one man who refused to give up. The power of persistence. As you have no doubt guessed, the quality that took Macy through failure after failure after failure was his persistence. That is the little difference that makes a big difference when it comes to failing forward. It separates those who achieve success from those who only dream about it. Nothing worth achieving comes easily. The only way to fail forward and achieve your dreams is to cultivate tenacity and persistence. These qualities can be learned partly by developing the habit of following through on your commitments when you don't feel like it. But to begin cultivating these qualities, you need a strategy. And that's what I want to give you now. A 4-point plan for approaching achievement that will encourage stamina and resilience in the face of failures. All right, number 1, purpose. Find one. More than anything else, having a sense of purpose keeps a person going in the midst of adversity. It is the fuel that powers persistence. Business consultant Paul Stoltz did an extensive study on what it takes for individuals to persist through setbacks. According to Stoltz, the most important ingredient of persistence is this: identifying your mountain, your purpose in life, so that the work you do is meaningful. I run into people every day who are basically climbing the wrong mountain. People who have spent 20 years or more of their lives doing something that has no deep purpose for them. Suddenly they look back and go, what have I been doing? Okay, sorry, there was like a box, but it's coming. If you are a purpose-driven person naturally, then you probably already possess an innate sense of direction that helps you overcome adversity. But if you're not, then you may need some help. Use the following steps to help you develop a desire. Get next to people who possess great desire. Develop discontent with the status quo. Search for a goal that excites you. Put your most vital possessions into that goal. Visualize yourself enjoying the rewards of that goal. If you follow this strategy, you may not immediately find your ultimate purpose, but you will at least start moving in that direction. And that's important. As Abraham Lincoln said, always bear in mind that your resolution to succeed is more important than any other thing. That resolution comes from a sense of purpose. Number 2, excuses. Eliminate them. Agricultural scientist George Washington Carver noted 99% of failures come from people who have the habit of making excuses. Sorry, I need a drink of water. Okay. Yeah. Having desire alone will not get you through your failures. You have to forget about making excuses and keep moving forward, as R.H. Macy did. Recently, I read a story about Dean Rhodes, a man who missed opportunity after opportunity, but he didn't make excuses for his shortcomings or whine about what might have been. He kept going. Here's what I mean. Rhodes met Dave Thomas long after the restaurateur opened his first Wendy's. Rhodes admitted that he always knew the young Thomas would someday do something big, but when given the opportunity to invest in Wendy's, he didn't. Later, Rhodes met Colonel Sanders and had an opportunity to buy stock in his company before it went national. But he turned that down as well because he didn't agree with some of the colonel's ideas. When Rhodes was in the restaurant equipment business, he often had equipment salesmen in his office trying to sell him on their machines. One of them was Ray Kroc. Rhodes admitted that Kroc was a pleasant person. However, he chose not to invest in the little hamburger stand called McDonald's. A few years later, on a cruise, he met an attorney from the Pacific Northwest who suggested that Rhodes invest in his son's new computer company. It had a funny name, Microsoft. Rhodes declined. Most people will pull their hair out and complain if they missed only one of those opportunities, making excuses for why it didn't work out. Not Rhodes. He saw his mistakes for what they were and focused on pursuing his own dreams and opportunities. Eventually, he saw his name at number 289 on the Forbes list of the 400 most successful business owners in America. No matter how many opportunities you've missed or mistakes you've made, don't ever make excuses. Bite the bullet, take complete responsibility for yourself, and keep trying. Number 3, incentives. Develop some. Nothing helps a person remain tenacious like a good incentive. That's why so many companies use them with their employees. Walter Elliott said, "Perseverance is not a long race. It is many short races, one after another." Amen. If you give yourself worthwhile incentives to win the short races, attaining a long-term goal seems less formidable. As you develop incentives for yourself, keep these things in mind. Reward yourself only after you reach the goal. Divide the process into stages to multiply the rewards. Include others. That increases accountability and makes achievement more enjoyable. What you choose to use as incentives is up to you, but match the incentive to the goal. Just as a parent doesn't reward a child for finishing his vegetables with a trip to Disneyland, don't make rewards for the small objectives too big. Otherwise, you will undermine your desire to keep going. Number 4, determination. Cultivate it. Author Napoleon Hill noted, "Effort only fully releases its reward after a person refuses to quit. To develop persistence over the long haul, you have to cultivate inward determination on a continual basis. And if you do, someday your story may be similar to one of these. Admiral Peary attempted to reach the North Pole 7 times before he made it on try number 8. Oscar Hammerstein had 5 flop shows that lasted less than a combined total of 6 weeks before Oklahoma, which ran for 269 weeks and grossed $7 million. John Creasy received 743 rejection slips from publishers before one word was ever published. He eventually published 560 books, which have sold more than 60 million copies. Eddie Arcaro lost 250 consecutive races before he won his first. Albert Einstein, Edgar Allan Poe, and John Shelley were all expelled from school for being mentally slow. Learn to become a determined individual. Inspire yourself with stories of people who tried, failed, and kept going. And remember, the only difference between a little shot and a big shot is that the big shot kept shooting." A surprise at Christmas. I will always associate persistence with someone I got to know in San Diego about 10 years ago while I was the senior pastor of Skyline Church. I first met him at a performance of our Christmas production. Those performances were always major events. Each year we did 24 performances over 3 weeks to audiences totaling more than 20,000 people. As I was backstage talking to some of the singers and actors before a performance, I heard them excitedly talking to one another. "Orville's here. Orville is in the audience," I could hear them saying. I thought that was nice. Orville Butcher was the founding pastor of Skyline, and I was glad to see that the people were excited about putting on a good show for him. When I stepped out in front of the people in the auditorium to welcome them to the performance, I spotted someone sitting in the front row that I recognized. He was a tall, thin man with wavy gray hair, glasses, suspenders, and a red bow tie. That's when I realized that they hadn't been talking about Orville Butcher. Like me, they had seen Orville Redenbacher in the audience. You never guess from looking at him. Over the years, I got to know Orville Redenbacher. He was bright and cheerful, just as he appeared to be on television commercials. And he was generous too. About twice a year, a truck would pull up to my house and the men would unload boxes of popcorn for me and my family, a gift from Orville. Most people who saw Orville Redenbacher on television thought he was an actor portraying a businessman. He seemed so quirky that people assumed that his persona was a made up character. Adweek described him as a wry caricature sprung from American Gothic, an owlish codger with the deportment of a lifelong prom chaperone. But he was the genuine article. He personally developed the popcorn he sold, and how he did it is a study in persistence. Indiana farm boy. Redenbacher was born on a farm in Jackson Township, a few miles south of Brazil, Indiana, in 1907. At age 12, he started growing popcorn in addition to doing his numerous chores. In time, his additional crop brought in 150 a month, most of which he set aside for college. In 1924, he graduated from high school, the first person in his family to reach that milestone. He received an appointment to West Point, but instead he went to Purdue. His ambition was to become a county agent. Times were tough, and coming from a farming family meant that he didn't have much money. So Redenbacher worked hard and did lots of odd jobs for the university in the agricultural department, including some experiments with popcorn hybrids. Many times he considered quitting, but he always persevered. In a letter to his fiancée, he wrote why he hadn't given up. First, I always wanted my children to know I was a college graduate. Second, I was afraid people back home would think I couldn't make it or couldn't make my grades or else got kicked out. Hold on one sec. Sorry, the phone call coming in and it makes my screen go off. All right, second, I was afraid people back home would think I couldn't make my grades or else got kicked out. And the third reason was because I told my folks that I was going to college. The first 2 summers I went home with the full intention of quitting, but these other things got to working and every fall found me back at Purdue. In 1928, he received his degree in agriculture. New opportunities. The first job Redenbacher took was as a teacher, but the next year he became a county agent, a job he held until 1940 when he received an offer from the Princeton Mining Company to manage its newly acquired Princeton Farms. At 12,000 acres, it was the largest farm in Indiana. There he again experimented with popcorn hybrids. For 10 years, Redenbacher managed Princeton's concerns and was highly successful. But in 1950, he and his friend Charlie Bowman decided to go into business together, purchasing the George F. Chester and Son Seed Company. Once again, Redenbacher was highly successful, and again, he spent lots of time developing his hybrid. To give you an idea of the magnitude of that task, read the words of his grandson, Gary Redenbacher. Grandpa was a tireless worker. The effort that was required to come up with the gourmet hybrid was enough work for anyone's lifetime. Those who have ever tried to hybridize a rose or any other plant know that it's just a matter of dogged determination and time. I tell people to imagine that they are in a football stadium full of fans. Imagine that each fan is a stalk of corn. Your job is to go to each cornstalk in the stands and individually pollinate each one. But since the average football stadium only holds about 50,000 people, you'll need to do 3 stadiums before you've pollinated as many cornstalks as Grandpa did each year. Through all these tens of thousands of hybrids, Grandpa never lost sight of his goal, to produce a better popcorn. Dang, it's a lot of work. Success at last. Finally, in 1965, Redenbacher perfected his popcorn hybrid. He had a popcorn that outperformed every other variety in popping volume, poppability, and flavor. But his battle wasn't over. It took him another 10 years to make his popcorn the best-selling brand in the world. And that's when he and Charlie Bowman sold the brand to Hunt Wesson Foods. It would have been easy for Redenbacher to quit his quest for the perfect popcorn. He wasn't successful in marketing it until he was 67 years old. But he had a dream and the determination to pursue it, and he wouldn't give up. When asked about his philosophy, he said, I followed the classic homespun principles, never say die. Never be satisfied, be stubborn, be persistent, integrity is a must. Anything worth having is worth striving for with all your might. Does it sound corny?
Walk out.
Honestly, that's all there is to it. There's no magic formula. If you desire to succeed, realize that there's not much difference between success and failure. If you are willing to be doggedly persistent, you can be a success. So the recap of the 14th step is understand there's not much difference between failure and success. Take time to write down your dream and the reason why you desire to fulfill it. Then write down all of the things that you would be willing to go through to make it happen. You try to think of everything that could possibly go wrong as you pursue it. If you do that, you will be mentally prepared for problems to come, and that will help you to become more persistent. So, to recap the 14 steps we've gone through so far, number 1 is you realize there's one major difference between average people and achieving people, and that is that they fail a lot and they embrace failure. Number 2 is to learn a new definition of failure. Number 3, remove the you from failure. Number 4, take action and reduce your fear. Number 5, change your response to failure by accepting responsibility. Number 6, don't let the failure from outside get inside you. Number 7, say goodbye to yesterday. Number 8, change yourself and your world changes. Number 9, get over yourself and start giving yourself. Number 10, find the benefit in every bad experience. 11, if at first you do succeed, try something harder. Number 12, learn from a bad experience and make it a good experience. 13, work on the weakness that weakens you. And 14, understand there's not much difference between failure and success. So we just have 2 more chapters of this book. Seriously, I don't know, it might be one of my favorites. I can definitely relate to it right now, for sure. We have about 8 minutes until our power hour. So I'm going to hop off because I just need to use the restroom. But I'll also process the recording too. So we'll hop back on it too. Okay, guys? You're the best.